a shift happening in the world of relationships that a lot of men still don't understand. Women over 50 aren't giving up on love. They're not becoming cold, and they're not secretly hoping someone will rescue them. They're simply seeing something youth can't see yet, the cost. Because when you've spent decades loving, nurturing, compromising, and emotionally managing a household, you stop romanticizing what drains you. You stop calling it just how relationships are. You start calling it what it is, labor. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand the truth that flips the whole conversation on its head. This isn't a dating crisis, it's an emotional labor crisis. So if you've felt this shift, if the thought of starting over doesn't feel exciting, it feels heavy, type "done" in the comments. Just that one word, done. This isn't just culture, this is psychology. The second half of life doesn't keep asking, will I be chosen? It asks something far more ruthless, do I still belong to myself? Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole, not shrinking to be loved, not searching for someone to complete you, becoming undivided inside your own skin. And when a woman begins to feel whole, she stops looking for a man to fill a gap. She starts measuring everything by a new standard, peace. The statistics tell a story most people don't want to hear. Only 7% of women aged 57 to 64 are actively seeking dating relationships compared to 27% of men in the same age group. By age 65, there are 4 men for every woman in the dating pool. But here's what's fascinating. It's not a numbers problem. It's a choice problem. Senior women aren't struggling to find partners. They're choosing not to look. And here's the part that surprises people, and why so many good guys still lose. They think being good enough should be enough, while senior women are searching for something entirely different. The quiet exit doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with a woman noticing a pattern she has lived inside for so long. It feels like air. Dinner is on the table. The room is familiar. Her husband is talking, circling the same orbit. His day, his stress, what needs fixing, what needs attention. He isn't attacking her, he's simply filling the emotional space the way he always has, as if it belongs to him by default. And she stays there in the posture she learned years ago. She knows how to keep the conversation moving without friction. She knows which parts of herself to soften, which feelings to swallow before they become a thing. From the outside, it looks like peace. But inside her, something steps back, just enough to observe. That small distance is the beginning of awakening, because from there she can finally see the invisible agreement that shaped her life, not written, not spoken, just reinforced over time. When she stays agreeable, the room stays calm. When she brings too much of her inner world to the surface, the atmosphere tightens. And when she goes quiet instead, nothing collapses. Plates still get washed, schedules still hold. The day continues as if the most important part of her was never required. That's when the question rises, what do I want, before it's too late? This question isn't about dinner, it's about identity. Jung would call this the second half of life knocking on the door, the moment the psyche stops surviving through performance and starts demanding truth. Because the first half of life often rewards adaptation. It rewards the woman who keeps things together. The second half asks for something else. And here is the truth most people don't want to name. Many relationships don't end with betrayal. They end when a woman realizes she has been present in her life, but invisible inside it. Not unloved, just unfelt. And once she sees that invisibility, her fear changes shape. Solitude no longer feels like the worst outcome. Solitude is quiet, but it is honest. In solitude, she can hear herself again. What begins to terrify her is returning to the old version of the relationship, where she must keep editing her soul to keep the room comfortable. That is when the exit begins. There comes a moment in a woman's life when the question quietly changes. It's no longer, how do I make this work? It becomes, why am I the one always adjusting? This is the psychology of enough. For many senior women, this moment doesn't arrive through anger or collapse. It arrives through clarity. A slow, undeniable realization that something fundamental has been missing. Not passion, not loyalty, but reciprocity. Take Margaret. Her marriage didn't implode, it simply ran its course. Years of shared routines, shared responsibilities, shared history. From the outside, it looked solid. From the inside, it felt asymmetrical. She was carrying the emotional rhythm of the relationship, anticipating needs, smoothing tensions, keeping things functional. At 62, after her youngest left for college, Margaret sat in her kitchen one morning and realized she couldn't remember the last time someone asked her what she wanted for dinner, what she wanted to watch on TV, what she dreamed about for her future. The divorce wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for 3 decades. After the divorce, people expected her to be lonely. Instead, she noticed something surprising. Her mornings felt lighter. Decisions didn't require negotiation. Her energy stayed where she placed it. For the first time in decades, she wasn't bracing herself before entering her own day. When men showed interest later, kind, stable, well-meaning men, she paused. Not because she was wounded, because she had discovered a new internal baseline. This is what enough really means. It's not bitterness, it's not fear, it's discernment. Carl Jung wrote that the second half of life asks us to withdraw projections, to stop looking outside ourselves for completion. When a woman reaches that stage, she no longer evaluates relationships by potential or promise. She evaluates them by cost, not financial cost, psychological cost. What does this require of my nervous system? What part of me must go quiet to keep this intact? And when the answer is too high, she doesn't argue, she doesn't justify, she simply steps back. Because once a woman has tasted peace, almost is no longer tempting. So let me ask you something without rushing past it. When was the last time someone asked you what you wanted and didn't rush to fill the silence with their own needs? Most people still misunderstand why senior women step away from dating. They assume the options dried up. They assume she must have been hurt. But what's really happening is quieter and far more intelligent. She did the math, because after 50, time feels different, energy feels different, recovery feels different. And a woman who has spent decades giving begins to treat her peace like a currency. She stops spending it on experiences that don't return anything real. This is emotional economics. Take Diana. She's 58. She has her own home, her own routines, her own quiet system that keeps her life stable. A man she dated briefly wanted to take it to the next level. He wasn't a villain, he was pleasant, he had plans, he liked her. But Diana didn't respond the way she used to. She didn't ask, does he like me enough? She didn't ask, what if I end up alone? She asked a different question, one most women weren't allowed to ask in their 20s. What do I gain and what do I lose? And when she sat with it honestly, the list wrote itself. She could gain companionship, a travel partner, someone to share meals with, a warm body next to hers. But she could lose something that mattered more now. Her mornings, her clean kitchen, the ability to decide her day without negotiating, the freedom of not managing someone else's moods, health concerns, family tensions, or unprocessed emotions. She could lose the simple relief of not being responsible for another adult's inner world. That's the part nobody calls labor, because it doesn't look like work. It looks like being a good woman, but a senior woman has already lived long enough to recognize the pattern. What begins as romance can quietly become a job, and she's not applying for that position anymore. Jung called it withdrawing projections, the moment you stop treating another person as the missing piece of your completeness. You stop searching for someone to make life feel whole because you finally understand that wholeness is an inside job. So when Diana chose herself, it wasn't selfishness, it was self-preservation. It was her psyche saying, I will not buy companionship with my peace. And once you see relationships through this lens, you can't unsee it. Because now the question is no longer, is he good? It becomes, is this reciprocal? Or will it slowly drain me? This is where the conversation gets uncomfortable, because it stops being about men and it becomes about what a woman had to do to be loved. Jung called it the shadow, the parts of you that were pushed underground so you could stay acceptable, not because they were wrong, but because they were inconvenient to other people's comfort. For many women raised inside traditional relationship roles, the shadow is full of things they were trained to hide. The too much parts, the sharp parts, the parts that would threaten the image of the easy, agreeable woman. She learned early that love had conditions. If she was too direct, she was difficult. If she needed space, she was cold. So she did what most women do to survive. She edited herself. She softened her truth. She carried emotions that weren't hers to carry. And over time, that editing became so automatic, she stopped noticing it was happening. But then something shifts in the second half of life. The fear of being judged begins to lose its power. The pressure to be chosen starts to feel smaller than the pressure to be real. And the shadow, everything she buried, starts to push upward. Not to destroy her relationships, to reclaim her. This is why senior women often look different after a divorce or after deciding to stay single. It's not glow-up energy, it's integration. It's a woman no longer negotiating with her own soul. She starts saying no without rehearsing an explanation. She stops shrinking her opinions to keep the room comfortable. She chooses solitude over self-betrayal because she's already lived the life where she disappeared slowly. And once a woman has met her shadow, once she has faced her anger, her longing, her need for freedom, she cannot go back to a relationship that requires her to lock those parts away again. She's not hardened, she's whole. And wholeness has a cost. It makes certain versions of love impossible to accept. After a senior woman steps away from centering men, you'd expect loneliness to rush in. You'd expect her to sit in an empty house, wondering what she did wrong. But that's not what happens for many of them. What shows up instead is peace. Quiet, steady, almost unfamiliar peace. The kind that feels so different from her old life that it can feel like a secret she's not supposed to admit. Like living in a house where a noise has been humming in the background for so long, you stopped noticing it until it turns off. And suddenly you realize how tired you were. That's what peace can feel like in the second half of life. Not excitement, not intensity, relief. Jung would say, this is the soul turning inward, finally reclaiming the energy it wasted on performance and management. The psyche begins to invest in the inner world again. Creativity returns, friendships deepen, spirituality feels less like an idea and more like a lived experience. And here's the brutal truth underneath it. Many women didn't realize how much they were carrying until they put it down. So if you've ever tasted that kind of quiet, if you know what it feels like to wake up and only have to manage your own emotional state, type one word in the comments: relief. This is the part that confuses a lot of men. They hear senior women pulling back from dating and they think, but I'm a good guy. They think decency should be enough. They think stability should be attractive. And to be clear, being decent matters. It's the baseline. But here's the truth most men don't want to face. A good guy is not automatically a safe partner, because safe isn't a moral label. It's a nervous system experience. A woman can be with a man who never cheats, never yells, never hits, and still feel tense, still feel responsible, still feel like she has to manage the emotional climate of the relationship. That's what senior women are finally refusing. In the first half of life, many women tolerated emotional imbalance because they thought it was normal. They picked up the slack, they explained the feelings, they absorbed moods that weren't theirs. Over time, that becomes invisible work, a second job nobody calls labor because it happens inside the body. So when a man says, "I'm a good guy," a senior woman quietly asks a different question. Do you take responsibility for your inner life? Or do you expect a woman to carry it with you? This is why "I'm ready to travel" doesn't impress her the way it used to. She's not looking for a companion for photos. She's looking for someone who can sit with discomfort without turning her into the therapist, the mother, or the emotional manager. And this is where many men get offended. They mistake a woman's standards for cruelty. They mistake boundaries for bitterness. But what she's really saying is simple. I don't want to be needed, I want to be met. And unless a man has done his own inner work, he may be kind and still be costly. That's why good isn't enough anymore. In Jungian psychology, we don't just change with age, we change archetypes. For most of a woman's life, the world rewards one role above all others, the caregiver, the one who holds things together, the one who remembers birthdays, notices moods, smooths tension, sacrifices quietly so the relationship can stay intact. And at first, that role can feel like love. But in the second half of life, something new begins to rise. Not louder, not angrier, deeper. Jung would say, this is the psyche correcting itself. The soul stops living for approval and starts living for essence. The masks that once protected you begin to feel like suffocation. This is where the wise woman emerges, not the woman who gave up, but the woman who finally earned inner authority. She doesn't chase, she doesn't audition, she doesn't twist herself into shapes just to be chosen. She has lived long enough to see what happens when you trade your truth for belonging. And the shift is subtle, but irreversible. The caregiver asks, how can I make this work? The wise woman asks, does this honor who I've become? She no longer confuses attention with intimacy. She no longer confuses a man's need with her purpose. She can still desire love deeply, but she will not pay for it with self-erasure. That's why a relationship isn't the goal anymore. Wholeness is. There's an image I like. A complete circle. In youth, many women feel like half a story waiting for someone to finish the sentence. The wise woman feels like a full circle. If a man enters her life, he doesn't complete it. He intersects with it. And if he disrupts her center, she doesn't negotiate with that truth. She steps back, not out of pride, out of loyalty to her soul. Here's the relationship truth they never expected. Senior women didn't stop caring about men because their hearts went cold. They stopped because they finally saw the full equation. They saw how often love was packaged as endurance, how frequently partnership meant unpaid emotional labor, how many times they were told to be grateful for dynamics that slowly made them smaller. And then something shifted in the second half of life, exactly as Jung described. The psyche stopped chasing approval and started demanding authenticity. The inner world became louder than the social script. So no, they're not lonely. They're no longer bargaining with their peace. They don't hate men. They've simply stopped centering men. That's a huge difference. When you decenter something, you don't attack it. You just refuse to orbit it. And what replaces that orbit is quiet power. A woman who has tasted wholeness doesn't run toward attention. She moves toward what feels clean in her body. She doesn't confuse intensity with intimacy. She doesn't confuse being chosen with being valued. That's why the dating pool feels smaller to her now, not because there are fewer men, because she will not return to a relationship that requires self-editing as the entry fee. If love comes, it must come with reciprocity. It must come with emotional responsibility. It must come without asking her to shrink. And if it doesn't come, she doesn't collapse, she continues. Because the truth she never expected is this: being alone is not the worst thing. Losing yourself is. So if you felt this shift, comment one word: whole.